Welcome to the Archispeak podcast. I'm Evan Troxel. Each episode, Neil Pan, Cormac Phelan, and I have a casual conversation about all things architecture, and we invite you to listen in as we talk about everything in the profession, both the good and the bad. Maybe you're considering a career in architecture, you're still in school, or you've been around the blocks of Corbusier's City of Tomorrow more times than you'd like to admit. Join us in the studio as we stand around the water cooler and talk about why we love our chosen profession. It's time for some Archispeak.
Welcome to episode 61 of the Archispeak podcast, recording from the AIA Convention in Atlanta. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
And this Day 2 convention episode of Archispeak is sponsored by ArcCat.
Yeah, so instead of doing our normal read for ArcCat and telling you how great they are, which go back to some of the other shows if you want to know how great they are, and listen to that one, we actually got a chance to go to the ArcCat booth, meet these guys, meet our sponsors, and what a great bunch of guys these people are. They do a fantastic job. We got to learn a lot more about them, and we got to learn why we actually love them even more. What do you think, Evan?
Yeah, it was cool to meet Bill and Casey, and it's a family business, and I was really impressed with just how much they're trying to add value to what we do. They're asking a lot of questions. How can they do things better? What can they change? They've got some really great ideas in the pipeline. So there's all kinds of neat things going on with ArcCat, and it made me think like everybody needs to stop by and just say hi to these guys, and they will ask you for your input. And I think that as a resource for architects, this is a really cool thing.
Right. I mean, you know, we always tell you, go visit ArcCat, see what they're about. I mean, the value of being able to pull together details and specs and things like that, you know, sure, that's it. But this is a company, you know, a family company that is really trying to make it better, enrich what we do every day, and just, you know, take... You know, we talk about how, we got to do specs and this and that and everything else. We had this great conversation.
They're trying to make it as easy as possible. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And they're not looking to get a subscription out of an architect, right? They're offering all this stuff up for free.
Right.
They don't make their money off architects, but they're offering this as an amazing resource.
Yeah, so definitely go check these guys out. Their website is arcat.com, and if you're here at the convention, go talk to Bill and Casey and the rest of their team there. They're at booth 2419. Let them know you heard about us or heard about them on the show. And they do have that giant glowing red A.
Yeah.
Go take your picture
Can't miss
under the
them.
A.
Yeah, you will not miss it.
All right,
Go get your selfie under the A.
That's right. And if you get your selfie under the A, tag it with Archispeak. Let us know so we can show it. Maybe we'll put it in our show notes for tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be cool. All right, thanks ArcCat for the sponsorship.
Absolutely. And this episode's also brought to you by the Architect Exam Prep. For those of you not yet licensed, the Architect Exam Prep provides an affordable set of study tools to help you conquer the AREs. The study guides are proven to get you passing the exams. How do we know? Our listeners have told us. Help yourself pass the ARE by visiting our Pass the Architect Registration Exam page at archispeakpodcast.com/ARE and use the link provided there to purchase your study guides. And make sure you use that link at archispeakpodcast.com/ARE so Archispeak receives credit. And thank you to Architect Exam Prep for sponsoring this episode of Archispeak. So, guys, what's the reaction after day one?
We had a long day yesterday, right?
It was a very long day. Yeah, it was followed up with a chaser of some Advil.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say alcoholic beverages.
Well, that too, but you know, I had to drink something when I was taking my Advil.
Yeah, it's still before 6 my time, so I'm still dragging through this cup of coffee here.
I definitely am like enjoying watching the tables turn on you guys. I finally get to work on my time zone, and you two are like sucking wind.
No, Evan's sucking wind here. I'm doing just fine, actually. I woke up
says the guy who
5 minutes before 6, my normal time I wake up. So
he woke up 5 minutes before 6 with a huge cramp.
Okay, not everybody needs to know that. In other words, hydrate more. So if you're at the show convention, drink lots of water. So yesterday started out with the keynote address, right? I don't know. To me, it started out with a huge bang with that awesome marching band that came in doing the drum thing. That was really cool. There was a lot of energy in the room, I thought.
Well, there were 7,000 architects in the room, like in the basement of the convention center.
It was the basement,
and you were looking for the exits
with 2 doors in, 2 doors out.
Yeah,
it didn't seem safe.
No,
not at all. Especially, I think it took us about 20 minutes to even get out of the room.
Yeah.
I don't know how that got
20
past the
minutes
fire
to
code, but
look around to figure out a quicker way to get out, only to realize there isn't.
Right, exactly.
And there was an ominous hum of the air conditioning the whole time, and I was like, what is that sound that's just coming to kill us all?
Yeah, exactly. Which I'm going to be going to a seminar today about how to reduce classroom noise or reduce noise from HVAC noise in a classroom, and I think they should have taken this because it literally sounded like there was hovering helicopters over the keynote speech,
or like an avalanche was coming,
or just it was slowly, and all you were doing was waiting.
You're
for
just
it.
watching the movie unfold, and there's that sound, that cue that something bad is about to happen.
Exactly.
That's what was the underlying of the whole keynote. Yeah.
So we're not thrilled about the Atlanta Convention Center, or at least that room, right?
It's seen better days. It's definitely an older, convention center, and with all of the redevelopment that's going on around there with the new stadium and everything else, you can almost bet that a new convention center's on
at least a redo.
Yeah.
So why were there 7,000 people in that room?
Well, everybody was there to see Bill Clinton speak,
Absolutely.
Right? And so he didn't come on for at least an hour after the keynote started, because, and honestly, I mean, we'll get to this. I think that the stuff that happened before him was probably the highlight of the keynote for me.
Yeah.
So first up, I mean, Robert Ivy and his message was tell your story, right? That was a big, I guess maybe the next part or the current part of the I Look Up campaign. So there's the hashtag online that architects are using saying I Look Up. So it's hashtag I Look Up, all one word. And I've been seeing that a lot.
Yes.
I think that hashtag, what's amazing to me is even with the Equity by Design, where their winner of their hackathon was really about a hashtag, right? Mm-hmm. And so now there's this hashtag because you can see the power of social media throughout the show. Well, maybe not. Maybe we'll get to that in a minute, right? With the Tweetup. But this hashtag really has taken off. I think a lot of architects are using it. But I thought it was cool that they said tell your story, because I tweeted, well, that's what we're doing, right? That's what Archispeak is all about. It's about telling the stories of what it's like to work in the field of architecture, what it's like once you get out of school. And we get a lot of great feedback because we do tell it how it is. And so telling these stories, and that's actually my favorite part of the whole profession, is telling the stories of working with clients and the process that we go through with the buildings and how excited they are to have gone through that process. And the projects that get those stories that happen are by far the highlight of my career, I think.
Yep, and then we also had, the gold medal award winner?
Well, we also, first we had Edward Masria, right?
Oh, yes.
And he was given, I wrote it down here, the Edward Keeper Award. And I think that the biggest thing that came out of his, I mean, he's very well known. He's the Architecture 2030 Challenge guy, which he probably doesn't want to be labeled that. But, I mean, everybody knows, I think, what the Architecture 2030 Challenge is.
He was the guy who started to basically force architects to start thinking responsibly about sustainable design. This whole green trend that...
Well, he created a cause.
Yes, exactly.
He created something for architects to rally around because, and I think it was evident in his speech, because he said, people came to him and said, why are architects adopting this so fast, right? And so he didn't have to convince anybody, right? Everybody was ready to do this. He said that it was some huge percentage of architects jumped on the 2030 challenge within a month.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And really the quote that I took away from it was that he said, architects are optimists. And so it was natural. It was just something that everybody wanted to do already. And so, this guy is the rock star of the green building, the 2030 challenge. So
right.
It was really appropriate, I think, that he won that award. And it was he told a really cool story about what he learned through his dog passing away, and it was just a really well done story, I thought. And so it really did fit in also to the tell your story part of the I Look Up campaign.
Right. I think one of the great things about the I Look Up campaign that is just for me as the whole visual learner kind of guy, and always looking at stuff as inspiration for sketching and everything else, is that just the simple way of telling a story through a single shot when you're posting it on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. Like the shot that you took at the Marriott Marquis and the John Portman building, and all of the responses that you're getting back is really positive, because it's just a simple one view look at that, and this.
Yeah, but I don't think I even tagged it with I Look Up.
You should.
I guess I
probably
can.
would have.
I still could.
But it was. It's just that we all have kind of like this view, and it's kind of interesting for me to kind of look at how people use the hashtag I Look Up on just a simple one image, and what is that image, and kind of what story were they trying to accomplish with that view. And it's just kind of fun. I know that that's not the whole thing. I'm distilling it down to how people are using it to put up an image or whatever. But I just think it's kind of really cool, because I really do get the 1,000 words out of the picture.
Yeah. We also have to say that he, going back to Robert Ivy for a second, he did give us a shout out.
Yeah,
he did.
He said Archispeak.
He said,
I don't think he meant it. He
didn't mean it for us, but and it was clearly pointed out by a few people who tweeted to us that Robert Ivy said no Archispeak.
Yes, Mark, we're talking about you.
But I think it was KNOW that you need to know Archispeak.
That's right. I like that interpretation better. So who, we had the gold medal award winner.
Yeah, so that was Moshe Safdie.
Yes.
And I thought his speech was great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And just to see his body of work and some quick snapshots is just totally amazing, right? It's what everybody aspires and dreams to do. And what I loved was that he really also talked about the sustainability aspect and building contextually. One of the quotes he said was, "Glass towers in the desert are like igloos in the tropics."
Yeah, I love that one.
Right? He was talking about context and designing, especially urban architecture, and giving it a context, like a real context, and also not over-densifying, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the big things that we've learned that doesn't work is, you don't get air, you don't get sunlight down to the street level, and so the cities start to become unsustainable.
Right. Well, I like that he also said that, he thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was him, that he believed that AIA shouldn't just be called, the AIA, but also American Institute of Architects and Urban Planners.
Yeah, urbanists.
Urbanists. Yeah, urbanists. And, to, be able to know and understand the context. I was kind of, wondering if, the new urbanists were like, yeah, it should. Because, they always feel so on the fringe of things. And honestly, the trend of development and movement are exactly what I learned from the new urbanists 20 years ago, and it's now just coming into play, or people are finally recognizing that wow, they were right. And and they always feel like they're on the fringe of this profession, and kind of almost say, screw off, kind of thing. And for him to say that, I was wondering if, like, say, there might be, Andreas Dwani down in Miami was probably thinking, that's right, you better recognize.
You better recognize. So he ended his speech with a poem that he wrote, which was in a book that he said he published 30 years ago. And I won't read the whole thing, but if you look it up, if you just look up Moshe Safdie poem on Google, you'll find it. And it's a really nice little thing. And the basis of it is that he who seeks truth shall find beauty. And I thought it was, again, I guess the pun is intended. It was a beautiful way to kind of just end and package his whole speech. It was really nicely done, and you kind of see the story arc of his career in that. I mean, you talk about somebody who's had a long, illustrious career and is really inspiring not just architects but people around the world. It was great. It was a really cool tribute.
So then we had the big guy came out, right? I mean, that was what everybody seemed to be waiting for. I mean, everybody stood up, and they had to make people sit down.
Come on, the reason they stood up was because that thing was so packed with 7,000. I don't think it was capacity for 7,000 people.
No,
but they were so packed in there that we needed to stand up and stretch.
Yeah, it was tight.
No, everybody was there for Bill, and he had some inspiring words, but I think the general consensus by a lot of people I talked to is they weren't fully blown away by his speech. What did you guys think?
I thought he sounded very off. I mean, it was either the speech itself wasn't polished, or it was a speech combined from multiple speeches that he's given, or cut and paste out the word something else and added architect. It just seemed very off, the entire speech. And at the after he gave his speech, there was a Q&A session, and I noticed he had his hand resting on it, or his head resting on his hand.
He looked relaxed.
Relaxed. He looked very tired. So I don't know if he had just
everybody else in the room
traveled from a long ways away, or if he just wasn't rested. But I don't know, it just didn't seem like a regular Bill Clinton speech.
Well, let me say one thing that was kind of like impressive, though. So we had the big, huge jumbotron behind us. That was the scroll. The
teleprompter.
The teleprompter, thank you. And a lot of people were using that.
Everybody did.
He didn't.
No.
There was no words on that thing, because I looked back to see if he was like using it. And you could tell.
He was very... he's given the speech before.
But I mean...
He memorized everything.
But the thing that I find impressive, especially, somebody who really doesn't like talking in public, is like he's so fluid and so polished at the ability to just like stand in front of 7,000 people, or stand in front of 10,000 people, or one person, and be able to kind of like talk to them.
Yeah.
And all that other stuff. He did, yes, have that whole little, kind of fist clamped, thumb out kind of presidential mannerism of like, yes, we're all, or at least Neil and I are kind of making that little hand gesture that he used to always making his speeches, kind of like punctuating with the thumb up kind of thing.
Cormac, I have never noticed this before until you told me before the speech, and then I'm watching the speech and I'm going, oh my God, there he is, he's doing it.
And you couldn't focus on anything else but his hand, thumb up kind of thing. Yeah.
I thought a couple of chunks that I pulled out of his speech that I thought were really, really good. And I feel like I know people who I work with, we need to work on this. But he said, we have to stop thinking our differences are more important than what we have in common.
Yes.
And I thought, that message of unity is so important in architecture. It is something that has been severely lacking in the profession for so long. There are so many people in our profession who are not bringing the next generation in. We're not ushering them in, taking them under our wing. It's more of a fear factor, right? Where it's like these the new generation has these skills that I don't have anymore, and there's definitely like a buffer that's been put up. And so I felt like that was a really great message.
Well, that and the profession itself, we've got this kind of weird rift of design philosophies and stylistic philosophies that has fractured this profession so much. You've got people who are, adhere to the classicism and traditional and contemporary and modernist and stuff, and I can't talk to you because you design traditionally, and I can't talk to you because, you don't like modernist and all this other stuff. And we've created such a wedge between so much knowledge base in this profession. I mean, I learned a ton when I was doing residential and working with new urbanists about how to put together buildings, in a more traditional manner that has helped out to strengthen, my modern approach of things. Yeah. And, I would say that I learned more from the classical and traditional slanted architects in the way that I do modernism, because of the way that they had held to such a rigor. And Bill's words couldn't be more appropriate for that. But I don't think that the profession would be pulling that particular thing, but we should, because we need to, because we're losing out on knowledge that will be going away, and not shared with the new people, and and if I'm not able to pull it from them, and I can't transfer it down to the next generation, who else will?
And this is also a much bigger conversation, right? This is a global. That's commentary on so many levels.
Oh yeah.
So I think that his big thing though was because he really spoke about Baltimore. Yeah. But it's also all of the stuff that he's doing with the global initiative over in Africa, and I mean there's so many ways that and I think he was just trying to bring it to everyone's attention, that we need to work together. Right. And it bled right into his next story that he told, where he was talking about separating out the person with the highest IQ in the room and putting them off behind, right? And he said, let's find somebody with the highest IQ. And he said, I'm sure someone's ready to volunteer right now. Right? And then he said, well, let's find somebody with a 190 IQ and send them back in the room, and let's ask them questions for 2 days, and they get whatever they want for those 2 days, but they're all by themselves. And he said, the rest of us can sit out here and be asked the exact same questions and be in these uncomfortable chairs. And he said, the group will always make better decisions than the individual genius.
Which was interesting, because then I was having a conversation with somebody after that, over lunch, and he disagreed with that, because he's like, in our current state of affairs in this profession, if he's doing that scenario in just architecture, and I'm distilling it, it's not exactly the conversation we had, that there's so much fracture within architecture that the guy with 190 IQ will come up with all of the solutions, because we'll be too busy bickering about, this and that and the other, and, so no, Neil, you're wrong, and so we would just be, we would never really get to it, and I think it was, probably a little bit of just professional frustration. Honestly, I think that we've all learned in our profession that we work better and projects turn out better. Sometimes they don't turn out as well as we want them to, but then they go in a completely different direction. But I mean, they're enriched by the collaboration.
Yeah, totally.
I also liked his conversation about the low-hanging fruit. He didn't get into too many details, but I remember one specifically he talked about, where painting the tops of buildings in New York just from black to the painting them white. I think it was about an 18 or 19% decrease in energy usage, and that taking people that need work and teaching them for an hour how to do this, you can put people to work and save money, at the same time. It's like, and he kept pushing for, or
and
bringing up
emissions.
examples.
I mean, it was more than just
emissions,
money, but that's part of the component.
Right. Energy consumption. I mean, the thing, I think that was the part of the speech. He talked globally, and he brought these, big broad stroke ideas and stuff. And I think that's where a lot of people were kind of lost, because they wanted him to speak more specifically to them. And then when he started to bring it home with the low-hanging fruit, I think that's when everybody kind of leaned forward in their chair and said, hey, tell me more. And I think, now that we're actually like talking about this and doing like kind of an act-for-action review of the speech, I think he kind of left it up to us to figure out what that low-hanging fruit is. He gave us some examples. I was kind of hoping, here you are in front of a bunch of American architects. Tell him what you saw, because he brought up some examples of like solar power in Germany and things like that. Well, Germany is working towards being completely self-sustained by renewable energy. There's another country, and I'm blanking right now on the name, I think might possibly be Denmark, but that is purely renewable energy. And these are the low-hanging fruit that are easy to do. And I wanted him to kind of talk to the American architects and energize them and saying, this is what you need to do.
They're easy to do in a country the size of one of our states.
But if since we had a cross-section of architects who are
everywhere in the U.S.
Right. They're the built environment influencers.
Right.
Energize them to go back and say, okay, Mr. Residential client or, public school system or whatever, we've got to do this.
Right.
We're the ones who are going to have the energy to get out there and push these projects to make them better and all that other stuff.
I think one of the challenges that we have as architects is convincing our clients that this low-hanging fruit is done normally in other parts of the world.
Right.
And especially in the public sector where I'm working, where they don't want to do anything like that.
Right.
It is a really difficult conversation, and I think that this would be a worthy thing for us to explore. And maybe there's somebody out there who's a listener to the podcast who has ideas on ways to start to, ultimately convince the United States, the people who are building buildings in the United States, and I know that this is a blanket statement, but we need to move this conversation forward because we are shut down so fast when we bring up these ideas to our clients. We need better ways to communicate this stuff. We need better ways to just make people aware that these things are so easily achievable. Because there's evidence that people are actually doing it in other parts of the world. A friend of mine went to Singapore, and he was like, it is normal that there is a green roof on this building. It is normal that there is a giant hole in the skyscraper with a forest growing in it. Every building has that. What is the next question? Yeah. Right? It was totally normal. But here, it is not like that at all. Right. Especially in the projects and the clients that I'm working with.
Well, what's their first question? How much is that going to cost?
How much does it cost? How hard is it to maintain?
Right. Yeah, maintenance is actually even bigger.
Designed by maintenance.
So, exactly. Yes. Yeah. The pain.
Yeah.
So now what's funny is that here we are kind of doing this review of the speech, and we kind of left it somewhat, disappointed. And now
we're pulling a lot out of it.
Now I'm actually more energized by the speech than I was when we listened to it. So I think that and maybe hopefully there's other architects sitting in a room or around coffee right now because it's early and we all need it, and we're going to have another long day of walking around dealing with people. So we need the caffeine fix. But I'm hoping they're having this conversation too.
I think the biggest thing that I took away as far as just an overall feeling was that I didn't feel inspired by his speech.
Yes.
But I think there was the kernels in there of all these conversations that we can have now. And I hope that's happening. I hope that people didn't just listen and forget about it and go on with their day, but that it does trigger these conversations to be happening while we're here, because this is, when I go to a conference, I want to come back energized and inspired, and I feel like it's these kinds of conversations that are going to do that.
Right. Yeah. I want to feel like I just left a Rocky movie.
Yeah.
I want to go out. I want to go punch something.
Well, on that theme, there was more good news yesterday. I attended a press briefing by NCARB, actually, and they actually have some very good news about the architecture profession, at least from how they see it, which is in licensure and by candidates taking and completing the ARE. All of their numbers for those items are way up right now. And so according to their By the Numbers report, which is coming out here soon, but the preliminary numbers, everything is up, and they say it's proof that the profession is healthy and growing. And it looks like, I know from my own personal perspective, and it seems like in the job market in general, that is all true. And so this is good. We've been in a long dark slumber of our profession, and it looks like, according to this, it's coming out. And as we come out of that, they also reported on a task force that they set up about a year ago to study the word intern and how it's used in the profession, and how they actually use that word in their legal language and description. And so they basically came back with a report from this task force that basically simply stated that the title of architect will be restricted to licensed individuals, and that for anyone pursuing licensure, any title held by those people does not need to be regulated by NCARB. And so essentially they're saying, we're not going to be part of this intern debate. We're not going to regulate that term. And then also as a third term is the architect emeritus title, which they said is fine. It clearly states that they're architects, but now they're retired. That was clear, and that's okay. But they're kind of sidestepping to a certain extent the whole idea. They're saying, okay, we're not going to legislate what people that are not licensed are called. You do whatever you want, and they're going to be working on updating their language in the future, and then going to all the different states and jurisdictions that do govern the title. And see about them, but that's a legislative process, and likely will take a long time to work through getting either that word accepted or not accepted, or just changing the language throughout all the different licensing or governing bodies that do this across the country. So anyway, what are you guys' thoughts on that and what they said yesterday as far as intern and their use of that word?
I've never been offended. I've never been offended by the term intern, because it almost has the same connotations as the engineering training kind of the term that they use of engineering training or architect in training. I know we can't use the word architect. That is just, you're still learning. And there's a lot of people who've spent their entire career not being licensed and feel offended by it. And here I am, the only one on the cast that isn't licensed and has got plenty of years, very long in the tooth in this profession. And technically I'm still an intern. I'm okay with being called a project manager, because that's what I am, and it doesn't diminish my experience and education and knowledge and everything else. It does, however, every once in a great while, when I do get slapped in the face of saying, you're still just an intern, to have myself stop and reflect about, why am I not licensed yet? Why has it taken me so long to get to this point in realization and stuff? And I know Evan, as the newly christened architect, can probably, add a little bit more to it. But I mean, it's this. It's a little too PC to just say, I just don't want to be called an intern because I went through college and I worked my butt off. It's like, but the learning process still isn't over, and it's okay to be called an intern. Do you need a hug?
Let's hug it up. Well, I was never called an intern. I mean, in the last 20 years of my career, I haven't been called an intern by anybody.
Right.
I mean, so you could say technically that I was, which is fine, but I don't think that that's a term that's used in the profession beyond people who are actually interning.
Right.
when they're in college doing a summer job, we will hire interns.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I don't think that title was exploited.
No. Yeah, I mean,
so to me, the big thing that I took away from them saying what they're really taking a stand on at NCARB is the word architect, and Build LLC, who's on Twitter, and they've got their blog, which is great. They took a stand on this as well. They wrote an article a few months back where it says we're taking back architect, and and I think this is also what NCARB is saying is we're taking back architect. It's ours only. You can't be a software architect, right? You can't be, whatever other industry has co-opted the word architect to say that whatever they're architecting, right? It's been, I don't know it's been diffused out there. Everybody, it's watered down because so many other people are taking it. And then basically NCARB's saying, no, it's only for people who are licensed architects.
Right. I mean, do the web search, and type in architect.
Do a job search.
I was going to say, does our architect actually come up first?
No.
Hell no. You have to swim through hundreds before you actually get to, ooh, look, this is one that's actually for us.
For architecture. Yeah. So I thought that was a good stand, and really I think with the press release that NCARB came out with yesterday, or the official
press release
announcement, is that here's what we say we want. We don't know how we're going to do it. We want the industry to help us figure this out, and this is the beginning of a conversation. But here's our official stance, which is new.
Right. Yes. Now I do want to say one thing. I really want to be an architect, emeritus. I want to be the retired architect.
You want to skip?
I want to skip everything and just go straight to being retired.
You just get your license and then you just call it quits.
Yeah. Well, that hit the lottery.
So, if you have questions about this topic or want to talk to NCARB more about it, they've got lots of great people at their booth, which is 2145. So if you're here at the convention, go talk to them, learn more about it, be involved. They're doing some other great things as well concerning changing how they interface with architects and those that are working towards licensure. They're really trying to get out in front and be more proactive as an organization. So we encourage everybody to go talk to them. Again, booth 2145. And I think they mean well.
If you talk long enough, you'll get a free T-shirt.
Yeah,
maybe.
They have chocolate.
Oh yeah,
they do have chocolate.
That'll keep you going on the show floor.
When you're walking around and you're feeling, got a little bit of the hunger pains, and you can't find the coffee, and you just need it. You just stop by there, grab some chocolate, and it was a great boost for me.
So the one of the other things I wanted to bring up that we attended yesterday was the Tweetup, the AIA National Tweetup. I've titled it, I don't know, I think it's the death of the Tweetup. I don't know if we need these anymore. I mean, what actually
it doesn't
happened,
need to be an event.
And it doesn't need to maybe be an event. What actually happened was a number of us all got together at that Tweetup and sat down and put our phones down and actually talked, and that was great.
Yeah. But it was the inversion of the Tweetup.
Exactly.
Right.
It was good.
It was definitely good.
We met new people. I mean, we made contacts and stuff. I thought it was fantastic because everybody was there, and we're like, phones ready in your hand, and it's just like, okay, what do we do? And then it was, I don't want to use the strong language of it was a bust, because it really wasn't. It was the opposite. It was
for
great.
A small group of people.
It was not a bust-wise, it was not a well-attended event.
Right. And what the way they kicked it off was super lackluster.
Yes, that's true.
It was kicked off by somebody who knows nothing about social media, and doesn't participate. And I feel like that is not the best effort right there on behalf of the AIA with this kind of thing, especially when they're pushing the whole I Look Up campaign. And so basically the guy comes out and is like, keep doing what you're doing. thanks.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, wow. And
where do you go from there?
So let me throw this out there, and you guys haven't heard this. It just popped into my head, and it's going to just fall out. Next year, AIA Conference in Philly. Tweetup should be emceed by the Archispeak podcast crew. We will bring it home and make it awesome.
Oh man,
that's I'm throwing down the gauntlet.
Okay,
AIA.
you can throw that down, but
reach out to us.
I'm wondering if because I remember 6-7 years ago when Twitter was still kind of new, not a lot of people were using it. There were a number of tweet-ups locally in my town, and they were just small gatherings, but 30-40 people might show up, and that happened a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, and then they slowly died. There are none anymore. And so I'm just wondering,
because people are tweeting all day long.
And it's popular. It's out there, and people are it's popular amongst a number of people, and they have millions, hundreds of millions.
I think
of
one of the
users,
reasons that's so lowly attended is because the name still sucks. Yeah. People don't want to be associated with a Tweetup.
Maybe that's it.
I think that's part of it. It just doesn't sound like attractive. It doesn't. It's not going to pull new people in.
So Tweetup needs to be rebranded. Then we need a rebranding of it. But I would agree with that. I mean, because what actually happened was a lot of fun.
It was a Tweetup meetup.
But it just I don't know if we need to have the Tweetup anymore.
What it was an opportunity for people who have a Twitter handle or an Instagram or whatever to see somebody else that they've known and meet them in person.
Yes.
And that's really what the focus should be. The focus should not be keep using this hashtag. Thanks for doing the social media thing on the internet. Right? It's basically an opportunity to meet face to face, and I think that's where we got the value out of it yesterday. Yeah. And so the group that was sitting in the Barcelona chairs around, and there was some wine there, I felt like that actually, it made me feel good about just knowing the people that I know, the people that we've reached out to, that have reached back. I mean, we had a follower, Klinger came, right? Yeah. Sat down, we shared a chair, and he was thrilled, right? Yeah. And so that was super cool to meet him too, because we've had this back and forth, and I got to talk to him about my vacation last year, and he's from that area, and he was like, oh yeah, I followed you on the trip, and it was, to me, that's what social media is about, is about sharing our lives, and other people get to participate and reciprocate, and that was a very cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how this podcast got started, actually.
Yeah.
So,
and I shared that story with that one software developer that's in my area. He's like, hey, I just started following you guys, and we were talking about military service, because he'd just gotten out of the Air Force, and because he had noticed my bag that said U.S. Army on it and stuff. He goes, were you in the Army? And we chatted and all that other stuff, and kind of got to learn a little bit about him and some interesting things that he's doing. But it was just it was kind of cool to make that contact.
Because that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Yeah, right. It wouldn't have.
All right, so I think that's a pretty good recap of day 1 of the AIA Convention. So, again, we'd like to thank ARCAT and Architect Exam Prep for sponsoring this episode of Archispeak from Atlanta. And if you're here in Atlanta, please visit ARCAT at booth 2419 and let them know you heard about them on Archispeak. And visit archispeakpodcast.com/ARE, where you'll find the link to purchase Architect Exam Prep study guides that will help you conquer the AREs. If you have questions or comments about this show or any of our other shows, visit the website at archispeakpodcast.com, and there you'll find links to our individual Twitter accounts and the Archispeak Podcast Facebook page, so you too can join in on this conversation. If you have a fun convention story to share, remember, you can always call the Archispeak Podcast hotline at 415-484-8496 and leave us a message. And if you haven't already done so, please leave a review about the show on iTunes. Those really help spread the word about the program and help others in the architectural profession find it. And we'll be back again tomorrow with another episode of Archispeak from the AIA Convention in Atlanta. So stay subscribed, and thanks for listening.